Hello, everyone. This is a disclaimer before the podcast episode does begin. This was recorded prior to the Bills Bengals game, prior to what was an awful incident on the field involving Damar Hamlin. We're just sending our thoughts with his family, with his teammates, to everyone involved in that game last night and wishing him a speedy recovery and just hoping he can make it through. Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. With just 1 week left, we are here to review the penultimate week of NFL action as week 17 draws to a close tonight. I'm your host Andy, and I'm this week joined by a returning guest, a guy who's been on many times before. You well known from the Hairdryer Treatment podcast. We're here with Steve. How are you?
Miserable.
Oh, I know it wasn't the best result for you guys, but at least you guys are actually in the playoffs. Whereas, with my team, it's anything but secure a place in the playoffs.
Yeah, but when you lose and lose to a team who, even though they beat you, still get knocked out of the playoff picture, it just feels rubbish.
And how was your Christmas overall?
It's been wrecked. I had a virus picked up just before Christmas, Christmas Eve, and I spent Christmas Day and the following 6 days in bed. Literally only been up and about yesterday and today. So, and of course, luckily for me, I'm going back to work tomorrow.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, didn't have much of a holiday period. My family came across. My brother came across from the States. He's here for like a week, 10 days nearly, with his wife and his kid. And I think I saw them twice.
Oh
So
no! It's
yeah,
difficult. I mean, I was a little bit ill myself, but to have your brother, who also we all know lives in America, to not be able to see him that much, that must be tough.
yeah,
That must be tough.
it is. It's and I won't see him again for years. He won't be back for years. I won't be out there for years. I had hoped to maybe get out there, not next year, but the year after. But it's not looking. Yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, we didn't come across to talk about my personal life. We came about to talk about how badly my team played yesterday.
Yeah, of course. It was a weird week. There was a lot of games that it's well, a weird one. It really started off on Thursday night. A weird game between the Cowboys and the Titans. One that really was felt like a preseason game because a lot of Titans players were out just rested or injured, but they did lose 27-13 to the Dallas Cowboys, who've still got a fighting chance of winning the NFC East thanks to the Philadelphia Eagles, which of course, if you don't know, is Steve's team, who lost 20 points to 10 to the New Orleans Saints, who did, as Steve alluded to, be eliminated from the playoff contention. Whereas the Eagles, of course, they still have the number one overall seed, but they're edging closer towards not being that the case. So in terms of that game, the Saints Eagles game, Steve, what was your take on how that went and how just the last 2 weeks have gone for your team?
But I mean, the first thing and the thing is obvious to anyone watching is the way this offense was built this year was built around Jalen Hurts, built around him having that kind of that surge that you expect from a rookie in the second or third year, which he's absolutely having. And without him, with just a flat pocket passer, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of ideas. The run game became a bit too obvious. When we did get it working, it was great, but for the most part, the Saints just blocked it up. And last week, exactly the same. With Hurts, there's more. You keep the defense guessing as to where we're going to run it. Are we going to go up the middle? Are we going to go around the sides? Is Hurts going to keep it for a wonder himself? Is Hurts going to launch it 40 yards to AJ Brown? Now with Minshew's not as mobile. That's not his game. You can sit a little deeper in the secondary because he's a bit of a gunslinger. He doesn't like to play his short, safe passes. He's got to launch it. He's got to sort of get the arm behind it. And I think that's been our problem. I think Hurts is back next week, and I think we'll see a completely different Eagles team. Um, and I ponder from yesterday what the problem was on defense because we have a decent secondary. It can occasionally get shown up a little bit against the Cowboys. I think they played a little bit too soft and they got run over. Um, but our pass rush is excellent. I don't think there's a game this season where we've had less than 4 or 5 sacks. We get to the quarterback and we get there every time. Wow, it was offensively that was a problem this week. Absolutely. Wasn't a problem the previous week, but again, and this is, I want to say no disrespect to the Saints. They do have a better defense than the Cowboys. The Cowboys had this defense that we spent the first 6 weeks of the league going, they're amazing. Look at the pass rush, look at the coverage. And then for the next 6 weeks, we went, oh, they're getting picked apart. There are so many holes in there. People adapted, people just learned. The routes get changed, and suddenly they were getting beaten by teams like Jacksonville. So I say that having just lost to the Saints. Uh, so no, if we have no run game like we had yesterday, we have no game because there's no. If you don't have a basic run game, any team in the NFL, then you basically you make yourself one dimensional. Without Hurts, we are quite one dimensional. We are like throw the long ball to AJ Brown or try and dump it off short with Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith had a great game. AJ Brown did what AJ Brown does, but there was nothing from the rest of the supporting cast. I think Goddard was kept quite quiet. Miles Sanders, when he did get free, maybe I must have done more. I think he maybe was a bit bottled up. But it's a bad week. I'm sure the guys will all just go home. They'll sit there, kick the dog, whatever it is, come back next week, and they'll be like, right, it's the last game of the season, the number one seed's on the line. The Giants are here. There's divisional hatred there, which goes back decades. And I think we'll see a better team performance next week.
Does that concern you a little bit? The fact that how one-dimensional it has seemed in recent weeks, and the fact that is there a risk that potentially you're rushing Jalen Hurts back? Is that a worry for you going into the playoffs?
Not overly. Hurts could have gone this week. I think Sirianni's already said that. He said he practiced during the week. He could have played, but it was one of those that we didn't want to rush him. We wanted him to come back. If he did have to come back before the playoffs, we wanted him to be able to come back. In the last week, but he's had a couple of extra days to get that shoulder 100%. I think Sirianni said that he's seen him throwing in practice. It doesn't look like he's wincing on it. It's like his arm strength's back to where it should be. His mobility, we all know, is unaffected. So I don't think there's too much of a problem with that. And I think coming back next week is a good idea because it'll give him an extra week, that wild card weekend. Just sit out, recover, get himself back. I don't think if we brought him back this week, I don't think it would be a good idea. Especially there was the risk when he wasn't 100% of him coming in, taking a couple of hits, and then being out for the playoffs. And I think yesterday especially showed we will need him in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, I think
big
that
concern for yesterday was Josh Sweat. Losing one of your key pass rushers any kind of the season is bad. And I'm hoping, I haven't seen the diagnosis on it, but I'm hoping that's not a serious one.
I'm just gonna look into it now. So Josh Sweat, he says he's back this season. He's released from hospital. This is 22 hours ago. Yeah, no real clear indication from what I'm seeing online, one way or the other. It seems very early days. Of course, it's only a Monday as we're recording this podcast, so there's still many days left before we probably find out truly whether he is going to play. I think he may or not play this week, just similar to Hurts, to have him ready for the playoffs because I think that looking at the week 18 fixtures, looking at the 49ers, who are the biggest threat to that number one seed, they play the Cardinals, so they're probably going to win that game. So, it may be a case where if you're struggling, you'll bring him on to try and fix a job, but otherwise, I think you'll rest him going into that to the wild card, or maybe even divisional round if you get that number one overall seed and get the bye. Um, Heading into Sunday's games, Arizona Cardinals did narrowly lose to the Atlanta Falcons, 20 points to 19, with Younghoe Koo getting a last-second field goal to win it. The Denver Broncos, they lost to the Chiefs narrowly once again, 27 to 24. The New York Giants confirmed their playoff spot with a 38 to 10 win over the Indianapolis Colts. We were hoping to have Luke here because the Bears, his team, did lose 10 by 41 points to 10, and that's really what I want to go into next because we mentioned the Lions before the season started. The fact that I had them down as a wildcard team, many like yourself thought that was crazy. But going into 1 week left, and as it stands, due to the Packers win over the Vikings, a 41-17 win, it means, and the Seahawks win over the Jets, which was 23 points to 6, which eliminated the Jets from playoff contention. That means that at the end of it, you've got the Lions, Seahawks, and the Packers all on 8-8 records going into the final week, which does include the Lions and Packers facing off against each other. So yeah, we wanted Luke here to go through the Bears' woes, but because of illness, Luke isn't here. But we still have Steve. Now, in terms of that, the Packers got a very impressive win. The Lions also did the same, and the Seahawks did what they needed to do against the Jets. I mean, out of those three teams, who would you have, Steve, as the team you think is going to progress and make that final wildcard spot?
Um, this is an odd one because personally, I really don't want to see the Packers in the playoffs this season. Their Rodgers' conduct previous to before the start of the season and what he's done to the team since then has been horrific. I don't. My problem with the Packers is, and you say that like, the Packers beat the Vikings yesterday. The Packers didn't. The Packers defense beat the Vikings yesterday because the Packers on offense were the usual terrible self they've been all season, and they're getting carried by this defense. Rodgers is being dragged along, and when the Packers win, it's because they engage their run game. AJ Dillon, Perb, and they just they have a little bit of depth at running back, which they haven't had in previous seasons, or rather, they haven't had fit in previous seasons. Christian Watson has been surprisingly good. I know we talked after a couple of weeks, and I might have slated him because he had a massive case of the drops the first 2 weeks. I remember his very first pass in his first game from Rodgers. He was wide open. Rodgers put it on a plate and he just let it drop through the floor. And I just went, Rodgers is going to hate that kid. But Rodgers persevered and they did develop a connection eventually. But I think my heart really wants the Lions to make it because that is such an entertaining team to see. You do not know if they're going to show up and score 40 points or concede 40 points. You just don't know. They're like, that offense is electric. Jamal Williams has the most touchdowns of any player in the league this year. DeAndre Swift is a great 1-2 punch with him. Amon-Ra St. Brown has just developed to probably one of the top 5 receivers in the league this year, maybe. When Jared Goff is throwing to you and you're that good, then you have to put a lot of credit on the guy. In fact, to be honest, the NFC North has 2 of probably the top 5 receivers in the league this year in Jefferson and Ra St. Brown. So, but there's the Seahawks, who we all completely wrote off at the start of the season when they traded away Wilson and they traded away Bobby Wagner, and they basically went full rebuild. And yet, in a season where they've gone full rebuild and where they now have a shed load of picks, they're 8-8. They could make the wild card. Regardless of the outcome of the game next week, this is a successful season for the Seahawks because in a rebuild season, they've managed to win 8 games. If the Lions were to lose, I don't know, it's the Lions Packers next week. I really, really want the Lions to win it, but my gut tells me this is the Packers. They're on that little comeback trail. They had, I think it was like 4 weeks ago. I don't know if anyone follows him, Tom Grossi, great YouTuber. He's a massive Packers fan. And Tom is always on about how, we still have a path to the playoffs. We basically just need to win out. And he sat and he went through all the things that were required for the Packers to win the playoff, get to the playoffs. and almost every single one of them has happened so far. So it's written in the stars. The Packers have to get themselves into the wild card so that they can lose to the Niners in the playoffs. It's what happens. It's the way of things. Let's not upset the natural order. But yes, for me, the Packers are going to get it. I would like to see the Lions get it. And I think the Seahawks don't need it. I think they've had a successful season regardless. So
Yeah, I actually think the Seahawks do it, not because I think because they're playing the Rams, who have been really, really bad this year. Whereas I think
resurgent Rams though.
it's just
Baker has been on fire.
yeah, but they aren't going to win this game. I think they lost against the Chargers, which took place on Sunday, the 31-10 loss. I think that showed that maybe it was just sort of honeymoon period for the Rams, Baker Mayfield. But
I think what it showed was that Austin Eckler is terrifying.
oh, unbelievable.
And Austin Eckler is, I don't care who you are or who you're playing against, Austin Eckler is terrifying. It's like, right, we can shut him down in the run game. Damn it, he's one of the best pass catchers as well. He's the absolute perfect dual threat running back. I don't know which contract is, but it should be twice as much as whatever he's on right now, because he has carried that team on. The problem they have is at wide receiver, where you've got Keenan Allen, who's been in and out with injuries this season, and Mike Williams, who's also in and out, but both are suddenly fit, and Eckler's fit, and Higbee's playing on. Is it Higbee's playing at tight end for them this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's just giving Herbert weapons all over the place, and Herbert is a good young quarterback.
Oh, sorry, no, Gerald Everett, ignore me.
Gerald Everett, yeah. I know, because Higbee and Everett were the 1-2 at the Rams for a while. But they just, all their weapons are coming fit at the right time. They invested heavily in the defense in summer, and that's paid off. Although apart of it, have you seen Derwent James' ejection yet?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, there's committed and there's So yeah, but I mean those players. I mean, Derwent James had a good season. And their defense had a good season.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in the playoffs on merit. Do they get beyond the wild card round? It depends who they play.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the moment, looking at as it stands, I mean, they're currently the fifth seed, so they'll be playing at the moment whoever wins that division out of the Jags and the Titans, and I think whoever plays them.
So basically, they're going to win in the wild card. Yeah,
and then they'll play most likely, unless somehow the Dolphins, Patriots, all the Ravens, of course, surprise. They'll probably play whoever gets top seeds. That'll be the Chiefs or the Bills, and that for me will be where their journey ends. Because I think as good as their team is, and offensively especially, I just think that the Bills and Chiefs are just too strong, or even the Bengals are too strong.
Give me
anyone
a
else.
Chargers versus Chiefs playoff game. That will be a shootout. I will love to watch it as a neutral. That will be 35 points each on the board, no question.
Do you reckon I think the Chiefs absolutely destroy them? I think the Chiefs have got the playoff experience. They've got on. I mean, they both have very electric offenses, but I just think that it's the Chargers. They are the Chargers, and they are the Kings.
They will charge things up, yeah.
The Kings of the choke,
What I'll say on this is, I sat and obviously I watch Red Zone with friends of mine every weekend, and I sat and I watched Red Zone whilst we had the Broncos game on in the corner, because obviously the guy whose house we go to watch it in, big Broncos fan, right? That Chiefs team did not look good against the Broncos, and that was a Broncos team that spunked 55 points the previous week to the Rams. Okay, that Broncos defense held up. That Broncos offense picked holes in the Chiefs D, and I said at the start of the season that offensively I didn't think Mahomes had the weapons he needed, and defensively the Chiefs have always been suspect for me. So I think come playoff season they are very, very beatable. I think there's just something about the Chiefs that, yeah, they have a playoff experience, but and you never rule out any team that has Mahomes and Kelsey, whatever. But that's a beatable team. Yeah. There's no team I look at in the AFC and say they're unbeatable. Even the Bills. The Bills have had the wobbles this season. They got turned over in Miami. They then beat the Chiefs. They've had two other losses, in both of which they haven't looked spectacular. And for the Bills to be spot on, the Bills need to have the run game going. They need to have both Moss and Singletary firing on all cylinders so they can take the pressure off Josh Allen in terms of the move behind the line. And that hasn't happened every game this season. And that's the two best teams in the AFC. Defensively, the Bills are much, much better team than the Chiefs. Offensively, probably on a par. But the Chargers offensively, if Eckler gets going and you have Williams and Allen, they're scary. They're scary.
Mm. I will say about the Chiefs, they have looked poor recently, but that is after the division got wrapped up. So they wrapped it up on the 18th of December, and I think the Chiefs, I think there's an element that they maybe got complacent because they have won a division yet again very easily. But I think come the playoff time, I think they'll find a way. But we will move on to other games that went on Sunday. I'm trying to hold off the Dolphins game as long as possible, but it's
Oh
getting.
no, let's talk about the Dolphins game next. We're in the AFC. Let's talk about the Dolphins game, shall we?
We will.
Andy, so what did you think of the Dolphins' performance yesterday in that game against the Patriots?
I mean, first of all, shout out to Sean. I know he listens to this podcast regularly, and he's a big Patriots fan. So I know he texted me yesterday, full of joy. And I think how can we go from being 8-3, second seed in the AFC, to being out of the playoffs with one game left? And it's just I can't disagree, because the last year, well, we were on the same record this time last year was Brian Flores. Our defense has turned to absolute crap. It's just been an absolute disaster, and I think Mike McDaniel deserves a lot of the blame for this. I mean, I will say, we've had the injury problems. Tua has been out, and Teddy Bridgewater comes in. He gets injured as well, and Skylar Thompson, who was terrible until the final drive, by the way. But even so, I think Mike McDaniel, some of the play calling. I mean, every game he abandons the run in the fourth quarter, it seems. I mean, I'll never get over that Bills game. We should have won that game. He just seemed to abandon a run there, abandon a run against the Packers. He's done the same again in this game, and it's a tough watch, because the rest of the game, obviously they won by 23 points, 21. Jason Sanders missed a very kickable field goal that would have won us the game anyway. And yeah, I think obviously the main thing in that game was that pick six by Teddy Bridgewater, which of course was his last involvement in the game. And I think it's just all gone wrong. It's all gone wrong for us. I mean, I went into that game against the 49ers. That first play of the game where we scored was a Trent Sherfield, very first play of the game. It looked like, that we were going to seal the playoffs there and there. But since then, it's just been terrible. And Tyreek Hill wasn't even involved that much, same as Jalen Waddle in the last game. And I'm looking at, it's just, we've hit form at a completely wrong time. And it is really worrying, because for me, just making it is good enough for me, because I've only seen us play one game in the playoffs in my 10 years or so supporting a team. But if we get to the playoffs, what's going to happen? We're going to play against the Chiefs and lose by 50 points. Is that what's going to happen? Because our pass defense is actually, our run defense is actually right, but our pass defense is awful. We every game we can guarantee we're going to allow this big play. Every game it happens, and it's really frustrating, because we had the Packers game won. We should have beaten the Bills, and we had this Patriots game seemingly locked up. So it's just every game seems to be a collapse at the moment, and I think it's just really worrying going forward into next season as well.
I think what gets me about the Dolphins is, and you've hit it on the head there. You're guaranteed to give up that one big passing play every game, and it bugs me because you've got Xavier Howard there in secondary, who I reckon is probably one of the top 5 corners in the league. Now, I get, obviously, he's going to cover one side and that leaves the other side open, but you would think when you've got someone of that quality that you can get people around him, maybe not as good, but, that can prevent that kind of big play. The other thing is, I do not know what's happened to Miami's run defense. When you played the Bills early in the season, the Bills are one of the most mobile, run-heavy offenses in the league, and you almost completely shut them out. It looked great. I thought, this is a team that can go out and do things, and now you just can't stop the run. You just cannot stop teams who don't have great running games. I mean, the Patriots traditionally, they're a run-first team, fantastic, but some of the defeats you've had this season against teams who their run game is very suspect, and yet you just haven't shut them down. You haven't just got that kind of 4-3 engage, and I don't understand the defensive play calling, not necessarily the offensive play calling. You talk there about the fourth quarter. McDaniel has a tendency to abandon the run defense, the run and go for passing. That's understandable because a lot of the time recently you've been behind in the fourth quarter. And that's just, that's the playbook. It's like you're behind, you start passing more right. But you can't just abandon it entirely. And you're right on that. And that is unfortunately what McDaniel does. He just goes, no, no, we can't afford to try and run them. We need to get big chunk plays every time. And the league doesn't work like that. If that, especially in tight games, if you go chunk, 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 then you'll just end up playing against teams that just play constant coverage and ignore your run game. And if you haven't got a mobile quarterback, and without Tua, you haven't got a mobile quarterback, you're dead. You're dead in the water. If you try and take that mentality into the playoffs, you're going nowhere.
Oh, we are.
If you
We are
get there.
absolutely. We are. If we get to the playoffs, we're absolutely losing in the first round, unless by some miracle we get through and somehow have a good day and everything clicks. I mean, it's. What I just didn't get it completely watching that game on Sunday. I mean, I didn't get completely how we were doing. I thought we were doing okay on the run game, and then we brought in obviously Skylar Thompson comes in, and remember there was one drive where I swear every play was a pass, and the same thing happened against the Bills. Every play was a pass, and the 49ers as well was like that as well. And it just you mentioned it before that you have to have a good run game in order to be successful. And right now it's just we're looking like a team where if we don't get balls to Hill and Waddle, and we those two get marked out of the game, we just completely crumble and we have nothing else to do. And I think that McDaniel, he's a first year head coach. He'll get a lot of layoffs and a lot of people will let him off because it's his first year being a head coach. But if this stuff happens again next year and the year afterwards, I'm sorry, he's on the hot seat completely because. Yeah, it seems awfully one-dimensional, and it seems, quite a naive head coach at the moment. But in terms of the, the final game doesn't really change too much. As long as the Bills win against the Patriots, if we beat the Jets, then we're in. But I've been saying the last 3 weeks now, as long as we beat this team, we'll get through. We didn't beat the Packers, we didn't beat the Patriots, and the Jets were the favourite on paper, but we were the favourite on paper against the Packers and the Patriots, and we lost both those games. So I've got no confidence at all that we're going to win this last game, and I've got a bad. I think again it's going to be another one of those seasons where we just think, what if? And I still think we should have kept Flores. I really do because our defense has completely gone to shit basically since Flores left. Josh Boyer, we thought he was, he was the answer defensive coordinator, but he's proved that all his success the first 2 years was down to Flores, and he's not, for me, excelled like we all thought he would before the season started. Other games on Sunday.
Right, final point on the game. So two things that struck me from that game yesterday. Yeah, one, Gesicki got a touchdown. Yeah, when was the last time he had a touchdown?
Oh, I mean, I'd read the thing. I mean, that's one thing I will
That's
say.
how badly used he has been this season
Oh,
of your offense.
it's been terrible, but he's no secret that he's my favourite player. And whenever he gets the ball, he does something. I mean, remember the Ravens game where he had that great touchdown where he used his
He's one of your
hand.
playmakers, yeah.
Yeah, he is. He's our third best playmaker. I mean, obviously Hill and Waddle are the main two, but who else have we got? We got Trent Sherfield, who has only had a tiny few moments of success, and who else have we got really? And I don't see why
No,
we're not
what,
using
what
him.
going to what you said though about the run game, this is where I don't get it because you have in Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson two very, very viable run backs who would fit into any other top 10 offense in the league. And yet, they're both running backs who are they're not just good kind of behind the line. We talked earlier about Eckler being that amazing dual threat. Wilson and Mostert, they're no slouches. They're good behind the line, they're good in front of the line. Get the ball to them. We talked about what I said earlier about how Gesicki being a playmaker. You have playmakers on that team, but there's too much of a narrow focus on the Waddle and Hill thing. And over the course of the season, teams have just adapted to it. The thing with the league is you can get off to a hot start, but to make the playoffs, you need momentum. I need momentum from week 10 onwards. And if what happens is from week 10 onwards, what you've done in the first ten weeks gets worked out and you don't have an alternative, then you start to struggle. That's where Miami are right now. And if I have to be entirely honest, you won't beat the Jets next week.
No, I agree.
No.
I've lost faith completely. I don't think I think we're completely in a rut. We got the. I mean, I will say the injuries have been pretty bad. Our current injury report has Teron Armstead, Bradley Chubb, Eric Fisher, Melvin Ingram, Raheem Mostert, Tua, Jaden Phillips, Eric Rowe, Teddy Bridgewater, Xavier Howard. I can't even find Byron Jones on here. I don't know where he's been injured as well. So I will. That's my only thing I will say is that injuries have been a massive thing, but every team has injuries, and going back to Kazicki, I think he's proved that he's not a blocking tight end, but I think you
Mm.
can have him as your third choice receiver. Has him in the slot. I think he can do great things. And I think it's a real shame that I think he will go in the summer, probably through free agency. So other games that took place on the Sunday, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secured another NFC South Division title after a comeback win over the Carolina Panthers. They won by 30 points to 24. The Commanders were eliminated from contention for their wildcard spot with a 24-10 loss to the Cleveland Browns. The Jacksonville Jaguars won by 31 points to 3 over the 2-win Houston Texans. The Los Angeles Chargers beat the Los Angeles Rams 31-10 in a battle for Los Angeles. Sunday Night Football saw the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Baltimore Ravens 16-13 with some late Kenny Pickett magic once again. And obviously tonight is the Bengals Bills. But our final game we're going to discuss is the game involving the 49ers and the Raiders, which went to overtime as the 49ers won this game by 37 points to 34. And brilliant performance from Jarrett Stidham, considering that he was brought in for bench Derek Carr. Whereas the 49ers win again. And I want to say that 7 in a row, 8 in a row they've got now. They're looking the real deal, aren't they, Steve?
Yeah, they're terrifying. I Someone asked me about this 3 4 weeks ago when we were talking about who the Eagles going to get this seed, that seed. It says who do you want to play in the playoffs? And I was like, I want to play everybody except the Niners. And it's not just how they're doing offensively. Offensively, they're superb, but defensively, they're scary. I mean, that secondary is solid. That pass rush is excellent. Their run blocking has been superb. Full credit to the Raiders for putting up 34 points last night. Stidham's stats looked like they looked like Brady stats. They were superb. I don't want to say that Crazy's got it right in benching Carr for Stidham, but Stidham got an opportunity and he took full advantage of it. That was a really, really good performance. It didn't look like a second stringer performance. That looked like a guy who'd been doing it for a long time. And again, as a neutral, really fun game to watch. Just went back and forth, back and forth. Didn't know what was going to go anywhere. He's already developed quite a good connection with Devontae Adams, which bodes well for the future. I don't know what they're going to do about Josh Jacobs, because obviously they've decided not to take up the option on his contract, so he will be a free agent in the summer. And his response to that was to put in probably the best season of his career. So let's see where that goes. But the Niners, again, adding CMC gave them a lot more penetration in the run game that they didn't have before. As mentioned earlier, Austin Eckler just being scary. CMC on his day is scary. Actually, if I had to ask, I'd probably say Eckler is the better back right now. But CMC is scary. He adds depth. In Kittle, they have one of the top 3 tight ends in the league. Unfortunately, with Deebo Samuel being injured, we don't get to see the full effect of the wideouts there. Brandon Ayuk's been a serviceable replacement, but I do think to really to be Super Bowl winners, they need to get either Samuel back fit or maybe go and find someone who isn't currently signed to any of the teams and say, do you want to come in for a couple of games? Maybe someone in the next with OBJ.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not against that. I mean, I think Ayak's been brilliant. I think Kittle almost has regained, has sort of shown the world once again that he can actually catch a ball. I think a lot of times for his own his own unselfishness, I think he does sacrifice himself a lot and goes down the more blocking route. But I think in recent weeks, him and Brock Purdy have really developed a good relationship, and I think he's showing everyone that he can actually catch the ball and make plays. And I think with him there, I think Ayuk's been brilliant. I think McCaffrey, for me, I think he has to be comeback player of the year. I think Saquon Barkley is a close second, but I think overall McCaffrey's just been basically almost like the old McCaffrey. To have him there, obviously, we've shown how not to use the second or third string quarterback. The 49ers are showing how to use the third or second string quarterback. Brock Purdy's been brilliant. And that defense, their pass defense actually isn't as good as everyone thinks, but their run defense and the amount of points they're allowing and yards per game they're allowing is really good. And they're one of the best teams in the league for that. They've won 9 in a row. I do think that I think I think they are a team to beat the NFC. I think the Eagles have shown inconsistency, but that is down to having no Jalen Hurts. I think when they're back, I think if it's not an Eagles 49ers NFC Championship game, I'll be shocked. I think the Cowboys are dark outside shout for that, but I think for me, Eagles and 49ers are by far the best two teams in this conference, and I think Shanahan, if he isn't already one of the best coaches in the league, I think he showed it this season. He's doing a tremendous job. And I think the 49ers are a real scary team. And I think Nick Bosa, for me, is the defensive player of the year. I think he's got something like 16, 17 sacks this year. He's been absolutely fantastic. And yeah, you must be worried when you play the 49ers coming up. But when you eventually play them, as it seems you're going to eventually in the playoffs.
I'm going to now. Bosa has been superb. I love Bosa. I love both the Bosa brothers. I think they're just incredible players. I'm going to kind of not take issue with it. I'm going to give you alternatives. Um, when it comes to Defensive Player of the Year, the two rookies you've taken in the first three, Thibodeau at the Giants and Aiden Hutchinson, sorry, at the Lions. Those two, they just shouldn't be like defensive rookie of the year. Should be in contention for defensive player of the year. Especially, I think Aiden Hutchinson at the Lions, who we talked earlier about how the Lions offense is like firing on all cylinders. That defense, well, I mean, he is almost unstoppable as an edge rusher. He's just terrifying. And he's one of those reasons why they've turned it around this year. Weirdly, here's a question for you, yeah? Because obviously Dan Campbell used to coach the Dolphins.
Yeah.
If you'd given Dan Campbell 2 seasons to build a team, would it be better than the one that's there now?
Be better than Joe Philbin, I'll tell you that. And Adam Gase. But I still think I still think if we had Brian Flores here, you know, I think, and he's still gone out and got Tyreek Hill, I think we'd be a 12-13 win team. I think we are, even though for everything I've heard from people and I know and people around the team, it sounds like he was causing problems off the field. But at the same time, as cool, as funny as Mike McDaniel is, he's half the coach that Brian Flores is. And I know Tua has improved, I know all this, but Tua hasn't been able to stay fit. And if I'm honest, the only good games have come against bad teams like the Texans, the Bears, a really bad and banged up Ravens secondary. So I'm not. I think I actually almost bought a Miami Mike T-shirt, but I actually asked for a refund because the last 2 weeks have been terrible, and yeah, I just think that. But I do think Dan Campbell. I think that I think everyone loves him, but I think that it's very rare. Very rare you see a head coach featured on the Hard Knocks intro as much as he was. I think that shows how much of an integral part he is to the culture and the team that they got on the Troy. And I think everyone will be really happy for him if they are to make the playoffs. But I think going back to the defensive player of the year, I think for me, I think it's not even close. I think that Micah Parsons, I think, is in the nearest contender. I think that it's TJ Watt played the whole year. I think he'd be a contender as well. I think I think they're 6-2, 7-2 with Watt, and then 1-6, 2-6 without him. So I think he is also a contender if he'd played the whole year. But I think for me, Nick Bosa has just been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, there are certain players who this season, the season's been curtailed by injury a little bit. But with a full season, I think they've been absolute standouts, and there'd be no question as to who's winning the awards. But yeah, a final thing on the Niners. When it comes to I said earlier that they need a little bit of cover at wideout. I think it's Ray McLeod has stepped up. But I'm really, really disappointed this season in Brandon Ayuk. I thought this was his breakout season. I thought last year he looked like he just gelled really well with the offense. But this season, you look at a player and you see a player that says, there was the potential and there's the regression. There's that one cut he didn't make. There's that not learning that last time he did that, the pass got picked. Ayuk seems to have stalled, and that really disappoints me because he was, for me, probably the guy I thought would be the breakout player for the Niners this season. And I wonder whether or not him not playing at that level is the reason they felt the need to trade for McCaffrey at running back to try and give him more emphasis on the run game.
I think, I mean, looking at his stats now, he has got 8 touchdowns and 956 yards from 74 receptions. I mean, he's tied for seventh when it comes to those touchdowns, and he's not far off the 1,000 marks. I don't think he's been that bad, and I think he's actually improved since McCaffrey came in. I mean, looking at the game against the Rams, he got 81 yards in that game. Whereas since then he's had 84 yards again. He's had 101 yards against the Raiders, 81 against the Commanders, 65 against the Saints. So I think he's been pretty good. I think I've been pretty good. I think that um, I think he'll be more of a factor in the playoffs than McCaffrey. 'Cause I think McCaffrey's going to get double teamed in the playoffs, and I think that Ayuk maybe the guy that maybe has an OBJ like season where he does get those touchdowns where he is the third choice they're looking at. Um, but yeah, I think the 49ers for me, I think that they are a team that I think if I think Trey Lance has to be worried now. Trey Lance has to be because they gave away all his picks for him, and Brock Purdy actually has looked better. I think I actually did an article where I've said they think they may have accidentally found their guy without even meaning to. I mean, Brock Purdy was not even expected to throw a single snap this year. He's meant to be the third choice behind Garoppolo and Lance. Both got
Because he
injured. I think
was
he's proved
Mr.
to be
Irrelevant. Yeah,
better.
he was Mr. Irrelevant, but you're absolutely right. He's just, and the thing is, he's come in and done what a rookie should do. He's just come in, he's not tried to do anything spectacular. He's tried to find his feet with the feet of the team, short dump offs, Kittle, McCaffrey, crossing routes to Ayuk, that kind of thing. He hasn't tried to kind of throw the bombs, which it was, possibly could have caused problems. And once he's got his confidence, he's just pushed a little bit forward, a little bit forward each game. He hasn't tried to do anything ridiculous. He hasn't tried to go, right, now I am the man, I am untouchable, therefore I'm going to start throwing, Baker Mayfield style 50-yard, 60-yard passes. He's just, yeah, he fits their mold better probably than anyone else at the moment. And
So
yeah, they won't have to go to the market for a quarterback in the summer.
yeah, I mean it's interesting what they'll do because I think Garoppolo. I think you would think from this how Purdy's played, Garoppolo may well be exiting the door. But I mean, what they do next year when everyone's back, when Garoppolo and Lance are back fit, you've got a quarterback room of Garoppolo, Lance, and Purdy. What do they do? Do they stick with Purdy, especially if they go on and
You
win the whole
don't.
thing?
You're not going to have a quarterback room of Garoppolo, Lance, and Purdy. You're going to have a quarterback room of Lance and Purdy. Garoppolo is gone. That there is no question in my mind that he is out of there.
Yeah, I
There's
mean,
nothing left for him in San Francisco, and I think they kept him this year because they absolutely had no choice. They didn't think Purdy was ready to start,
mhm.
and then Purdy proved them wrong.
Yeah.
So now that he's done that, and they're like, well, we got two guys on rookie contracts. We got who we pay like 25 million a year to. It's going to be no brainer for them just to let him go.
Yeah, I think so, especially and the amount of teams that do need a quarterback. I mean, the Jets want a quarterback. You'd think, even though they've come out recently, the GM Joe Douglas said they're not shopping Zach Wilson, but the Panthers might want
Zach
one.
Wilson is done.
Oh,
Zach
Zach
Wilson
Wilson
is
is
done
done.
in New York.
He is probably, I think he might be generally the worst starting quarterback I've seen in the last 5 years. I don't think I've seen this bad a starting quarterback since Josh Rosen. I really don't think I've seen a bad one as that.
I was about to say, the last 5 years, have you forgotten Josh Rosen?
Josh Rosen is the biggest modern day bust. I think he's more of a bust than Banzel, to be honest. But yeah,
Wow, that is saying something. Yeah.
because I just think that with Rosen, I think the comments he was saying about there was 9 mistakes made ahead of me and all the chosen Rosen tag he had and how good he was at UCLA. I think that and how he saw perform where he's just I didn't really see this Twitter where his profile picture is him at the draft. His photo on his cover photo is him. I think he's got. I'm gonna look. I've forgotten what the order is now. I know. I'm gonna get his Twitter up now because it's quite amusing. Let me get it up. So I know his Twitter page. So where is it? Josh Rosen. Where are you? Here we are. Yeah. So his profile picture is him at the draft. his cover photo is him as a dolphin, and his tag says quarterback Cleveland Browns. So it's the most confusing Twitter page. He's just got I don't know what he's even doing. I mean, his last tweet came in was a retweet in March 2021. His last actual tweet where he's saying something is June 2020. So I think he really has gone off the radar, and I think it is one of the crazier.
Will we have him in the XFL this year?
I think it's coming. I think so. I think he will play in the XFL. Will just be literally a career backup his whole career. Or he's not even a backup, like third choice quarterback. It really has been. It's been one of the worst quarterbacks always I've seen really in a while. But we will move on to our game, which will be over by the time this podcast is released or on YouTube, wherever you're watching this. As the Bengals play the Bills, I think this is going to be a great game. I think that both offenses are flying, and I think defensively, I just think that the Bengals have a bit more at the moment. I think the Bills have been their secondary has been a bit dodgy lately. But how are you seeing this game ahead of it tonight?
I really want to say that this is a simple win for the Bills, but this is the Bengals, and the problem the Bengals have this season is their run game. Joe Mixon was really hyped this year because last year he had such a good year, but they have not got their run game going at all. I mean, it showed when Mixon was out for a couple of weeks and Samaje Perine took over, and you didn't see Perine got good numbers, but you didn't see like a massive improvement in the run game. You still saw Burrow having to air it out regularly to T. Higgins and when he's fit, Jamar Chase. And the Bengals, for me, have probably they've got a much better wide receiving core than the Bills. That's what lets the Bills down, is that Stephon Diggs is not 100% this year. Gabe Davis is 95-yard touchdown or nothing. Isaiah McKenzie he's in the slot sometimes, occasionally, I don't know. And then you're left with like Dawson Knox to pick up the short yardage from tight end. And that puts so much pressure on Josh Allen, which, you need to balance that out. If you want to win the Super Bowl, your quarterback needs to be more, he needs to be not the guy that's doing everything. And I think other players in that team, Diggs obviously has fallen off a cliff the last couple of weeks. He's been injured, I know, but even when he's played, he hasn't looked like his old self. So something's going on there. He needs to find that form back quick before the playoffs, or the Bills could go one and done.
Yeah, and Diggs, if you are listening to this podcast, just that I am relying on you tonight in fantasy football. So just please, McDermott, just target Diggs in the first half, give him 30 passes, targets, pass every ball to him, give him the point, and then you can do what you want second half. But Diggs, I need you, and Burrow only in the action, but I'm against Burrow as well, so I need Burrow to not perform, which I would love for many reasons, but I just don't want Burrow to get the points. But that is the end of our Week 17 review. So first of all, thank you, Steve, for coming on.
You're very welcome.
And of course, I'd say you can catch us on our normal podcast, but we haven't done that in so long. There's no point mentioning that really, but you can still catch Steve on his Twitter. He will be mentioned. I will put his profile on the tweet when you get this podcast released. And of course, if you're on YouTube as well, it's at Watote, which is WATOTE. So you can find them on there. And you can find our podcast, if we ever go back to recording them, it's at Hairdryer Treatment Podcast. And you can find that on all Spotify and Apple Podcast networks. But this has been the Week 17 review. I've been Andy. This has been Steve. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.